Tonight, global travel chaos after an unprecedented shutdown at one of the world's busiest airports.
It's just lots of confusion and we don't know, no one really knows what's going on.
An inferno erupting near Heathrow, knocking out power and forcing a complete shutdown. Flights diverted, canceled, or forced to turn around mid-flight. Thousands of passengers left in limbo as delays are expected to last for days. We have the latest on the investigation and what impacted passengers should do.
Tariffs do make it harder and they make it more complicated. It becomes another factor that we have to deal with every day.
We travel to the Sunshine State where business owners are bracing for impact from President Trump's tariffs. An economist weighs in on whether a recession may be around the corner. If the Department of Education is dismantled, what becomes of student loans and other key federal services? The new plan to handle federal student loan debt. The unlikely star of March Madness, the team manager of a first-round upset whose aura has captured the internet and the nation.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
And good evening, I'm Phil Lipoff in for Linsey Davis tonight. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We are going to begin with that inferno and the chaos at one of the world's busiest airports and the ripple effects being felt now around the world. That fire breaking out at a nearby electrical substation, plunging London's Heathrow Airport into a blackout. About 120 flights were in the air at the time. They were forced to either turn around or divert to somewhere else. Firefighters were surrounded by smoke as they doused the substation. At the fire's peak, 100,000 customers in the area lost power. For nearly 18 hours, the airport remained closed, planes grounded. Roughly 665 flights were scheduled to take off today. Hundreds of thousands of passengers are affected, of course, many being told it could be days before they are able to leave. We have the managing editor of The Points Guy standing by to sort all of this out and the impact it will have worldwide on travel in the coming days and what passengers can do. But first, let's get to ABC's Marcus Moore at Heathrow.
This massive fire tearing through an electrical substation miles outside London, plunging one of Europe's busiest airports into darkness.
Oh my God.
Heathrow Airport shut down Friday, disrupting nearly 1,300 flights.
Air Canada 856 Gander Center, good day. Just got a call. They got London Heathrow shut down.
You can see the moment pilots were forced to turn around mid-flight. Others rerouted to new airports.
There's no other airports in the UK that we can go to. We have to land you in Shannon in Ireland.
That's a biggie.
New video tonight showing the blaze rip through the facility that provides power to Heathrow Airport and tens of thousands of homes. At Heathrow today,
It's all dark here, mate.
terminals in the dark. Stranded passengers in Terminal 4 going down staircases with their luggage, using their phones to see. The runway at a standstill, no flights in or out.
It's just lots of confusion and we don't know, no one really knows what's going on.
Robin Autry, a professor in Connecticut, was supposed to fly back to New York.
Everything's just up in the air. It's pretty stressful. And I'm worried about how much is it going to cost me to fix this, because I don't know if it's going to be fixed for me. I think I'm going to have to pay a lot of money out of pocket.
Joshua Ritter's stranded too.
Yeah, an airport like that for that long, it's a little bit shocking.
Tonight, officials say they don't suspect foul play, but confirming to ABC News, the Counterterrorism Division is leading the investigation.
Short of anybody getting hurt, this is as big as it gets for our airport.
Marcus joins me now. Marcus, at the airport, where do things stand right now?
Well, Phil, officials say that the power has been restored to the airport and some operations have resumed, but it is not expected to be fully operational until tomorrow morning. But I can tell you that we've seen new activity here at the airport, even some planes taking off. Still, the ripple effects of this are expected to be felt for several days. Phil.
No doubt. Marcus Moore from Heathrow Airport in London. Marcus, thank you. All right, for more on the ripple effects on travelers from the Heathrow fire, we are joined now by Clint Henderson, managing editor for The Points Guy. Clint, good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. This is one of the busiest airports in the world. Anybody who's been through Heathrow knows that. And while they're trying to return to full operations tomorrow, officials warned there would likely be disruptions over the coming days. What options do travelers have at this point for either trying to get to London or reach their final destination?
So a little bit of good news. We're hearing that American Airlines and United flights will take off tonight for their London flights. So that's a bit of a bright spot. Passengers do have options to rebook through their airline. Fortunately for Americans flying on American carriers, at least, they have been able to reach the airline to get rebooked. British Airways passengers have not been so lucky, but pretty remarkable that they've been able to restart operations already.
Clint, are passengers entitled to anything because of these cancellations?
So it's really interesting. Both the UK and the European Union have very strict compensation rules, but they don't apply in unforeseen circumstances like this. And the UK Civil Aviation Authority does require the airline to pay for passengers' hotels, food and drink, accommodation, and transportation in the event of situations like this.
Spring break is underway, as you well know. More holiday travel coming in the next few weeks. This is such an unusual situation, but still, I'm wondering if there's anything you would suggest that travelers can do before the day of their travel to better position themselves in these kind of situations.
The most important tip I can give folks is to have the airline app installed on your phone, because that's going to be your first point of contact if things go sideways. And if things really start to go wrong, if there's operational meltdowns, then rebook yourself. Don't wait for the airline. Try to find accommodations and things like that, and then keep the receipts and get reimbursed later.
Managing editor for The Points Guy, Clint Henderson. Clint, thanks so much.
Thank you.
President Trump today defending Elon Musk's high-profile meeting at the Pentagon and denying reports that the world's richest man was actually scheduled to meet with the Joint Chiefs of Staff for a briefing on the Pentagon's potential China war plan. Musk did, however, sit down with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Here's Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raddatz.
Tonight, 2 U.S. officials confirming that a scheduled Pentagon meeting between Elon Musk and the Joint Chiefs was changed this morning after a bombshell report in the New York Times saying Musk's visit would include a top-secret briefing on potential war plans with China, which would be an extraordinary expansion beyond the tech billionaire's DOGE responsibilities, especially given his business connections to China. Instead, Musk's Pentagon visit turned into an office meeting with Defense Secretary Hegseth, which came after a furious post from Musk denying the top-secret meeting was ever in play. I look forward to the prosecutions of those at the Pentagon who are leaking maliciously false information to New York Times. They will be found. President Trump denying a top-secret meeting as well, saying he wouldn't want to show war plans to anyone.
I don't want to show it to anybody. You know, you're talking about a potential war with China.
Trump also addressing the potential conflict of interest such a briefing would pose for Musk.
I don't want to show that to anybody, but certainly you wouldn't show it to a businessman who is helping us so much. He's a great patriot. He's paying a big price for helping us cut costs.
Hegseth, for his part, said the conversation with Musk was focused on government efficiency.
We welcomed him today to the Pentagon to talk about DOGE, to talk about efficiencies, to talk about innovations. It was a great informal conversation. There was no secret plans. That's not what we were doing at the Pentagon.
But the Times not backing down on their report. Trump and Hegseth also announced today that Boeing won the $20 million contract for the Air Force's next-generation fighter jet, which will be called the F-47.
The generals picked a title, and it's a beautiful number, F-47.
Trump is, of course, the nation's 47th president. 1947 was also the year that the Air Force was established as a separate service.
Our thanks to Martha Raddatz. Turning now to the war in Ukraine, where there have been a series of drone strikes from both Russia and Ukraine in the past 48 hours. To break all of this down, we want to bring in ABC News foreign correspondent Tom Sufi-Burridge. Tom, Russia has been ramping up its attacks on Zaporizhzhia and the Ukrainian port city of Odessa. What are the significance of those strikes?
Yeah, I mean, as we speak, Phil, we know that Russia is attacking with drones Zaporizhzhia again tonight, a city in the south. At least one person killed in those attacks. Kiev, the capital, also coming under attack. And this is a pattern. Russia is firing hundreds of these explosive drones at major Ukrainian cities over the last few days. It is also the case that Ukraine is firing a smaller number of its drones at targets in Russia. I think what is really significant in the last few days is we have seen evidence, according to Ukrainian officials, that energy infrastructure sites in Ukraine have been hit still by Russia, even though days ago Donald Trump got that reassurance from Vladimir Putin that Russia would halt those types of attacks. But we're a long way from peace right now.
And Russian and Ukrainian delegations are meeting with the U.S. in Saudi Arabia in just a few days' time, trying to reach a ceasefire agreement. What are the chances of a breakthrough?
I think slim at this stage, just because, on the ground, the fighting continues in a major way. And I think also the really important thing to hammer home to people is at this stage, we kind of have an idea about what type of concessions Ukraine might be willing to make in a negotiation to try and get a peace deal. It would probably be willing to give up a large part of its sovereign territory, which Russia's currently occupies, not recognize it formally as being part of Russia, but effectively give up the fight to take it back. Presidents Trump and Putin seem intent on normalizing relations between the US and Russia. And I think the question is that bigger prize for President Trump? Is he willing to get that prize at the expense of Ukraine? Phil?
All right, Tom Sufi Burridge. Tom, thank you. DOJ lawyers took a grilling today from a federal judge. That judge demanding answers about the mass deportation flights that sent hundreds of Venezuelan migrants to El Salvador. Frustrated with the answers, the judge accused the government of, quote, not being terribly cooperative. The question for the president now, does he believe he has the authority to deport people without having to show the evidence that the government has against them? Senior national correspondent Terry Moran with more.
A tense courtroom showdown in Washington over the deportation of more than 200 Venezuelan migrants to a prison in El Salvador, many under a centuries-old wartime law that allows the government to deport people with little to no due process. Federal Judge James Boasberg grilled the Justice Department lawyer about why those flights with the Venezuelans on board weren't immediately turned back to the U.S. despite his explicit order from the bench last Saturday. The lawyer admitting, I understood your intent, that you meant that to be effective at that time, appearing to contradict the White House. And Judge Boasberg drilled down into how this deportation order was issued, asking why President Trump signed it behind closed doors and delayed making it public. Why is this proclamation essentially signed in the dark on Friday night or early Saturday morning, and then these people rushed on the planes? To me, the only reason to do that is if you know it's a problem and you want to get them out of the country before a suit is filed, the judge said. The rushed deportations, the judge suggested, prevented the men from challenging the allegation that they were even members of the Tren de Aragua gang, the target of Trump's order.
I don't know when it was signed because I didn't sign it. Other people handled it.
In the Oval Office today, President Trump was pressed by our Karen Travers on whether he has the authority to deport people without showing evidence about them to any court.
Mr. President, do you think you have the authority, the power to round up people, deport them, and then you're under no obligation to a court to show the evidence against them?
Well, that's what the law says, and that's what our country needs, because unfortunately, they allowed millions of people to come into our country, totally unvetted, totally unchecked.
And the president once again today lashed out at the judge.
You can't stop that with a judge sitting behind a bench that has no idea what goes on, who happens to be a radical left lunatic.
An attorney for Jersey Reyes Barrios says he was deported, a professional soccer player from Venezuela with no criminal record. They say he was accused of being a gang member because of his tattoos. The family say Barrios' tattoos were inspired by soccer. His aunt hopes he'll get his day in court. It's not just the president who gets the last word, she says.
Terry, thank you. And the Trump administration's mounting legal battles are now raising some concerns about increased threats against judges across the country. Judge James Boasberg, Terry was just talking about, locked in that battle with the administration over Venezuelan migrants sent to El Salvador, has been targeted with anti-Semitic posts online and threats of harm. Sources telling our Pierre Thomas that U.S. Marshals are aware, of course, of the increasing threats against Boasberg and other federal judges as more lawsuits emerge challenging Trump's policies. Now to the urgent search underway for 3 family members missing for more than a week now. Officials know they had just visited the Grand Canyon and their car's GPS last showed them traveling west on I-40. There was a blizzard and a major pileup on the road that day, but what happened to the family? Here's ABC's Melissa Don.
Tonight, authorities in Arizona urgently searching for these 3 members of the same family, missing for over a week after visiting the Grand Canyon on vacation.
We've spent 3 days searching. We've exhausted all the leads.
The South Korean consulate submitting a missing persons report for 33-year-old Yi Ji-an, 54-year-old Kim Jong-hee, and 59-year-old Kim Tae-hee. The mother, daughter, and aunt were last known to be driving a white BMW rental car to Las Vegas after leaving the Grand Canyon. Authorities say the car's last GPS data showing it westbound on Interstate 40 last Thursday. The same day, this fiery multi-vehicle accident took place on that highway, killing at least 2. Officials say it's not known whether the family's rental car was involved in the crash.
Are there still any cars that are unidentified or any people that possibly may be unaccounted for from that?
That is possible that they were in that accident. We've also checked all the hospitals. We haven't had any contact. No further pings on the phones or the GPS contact with that car.
Melissa Adan, thank you for that. Sherry Papini, the mother who faked her own kidnapping, appeared in court today at a custody hearing. Her husband, Keith, says he has full custody of their 2 children, but Sherry is now asking for visitation rights and for the court to prohibit her children from watching a Hulu docuseries about her fake kidnapping. Sherry Papini disappeared in 2016, setting off a search by police to find her. She resurfaced 3 weeks later on Thanksgiving Day, claiming she was kidnapped, but then later admitted she made the whole thing up. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison and was released in 2023. President Trump continues on his path of dismantling the Department of Education today with an announcement about his plans to change how student loans and other key federal services are handled. ABC's Alex Perche is following that for us. Alex, what did he say?
Well, Phil, this was a big concern, especially once President Trump signed that executive order dismantling the Department of Education because one of its chief functions is handling federal student aid. The president today announcing that responsibility is now going to fall under the Small Business Administration, which is headed by former Senator Kelly Loeffler. Take a listen.
We have a portfolio that's very large, lots of loans. Tens of thousands of loans, pretty complicated deal. And that's coming out of the Department of Education immediately, and it's going to be headed up by Kelly Loeffler.
Yeah, so federal student aid, it's not just tens of thousands of loans. We're talking about a portfolio of $1.6 trillion here. Some 40 million Americans have student loans. So, I mean, this is a massive, massive new responsibility for the Small Business Administration. One thing that I will say is that while the president did say, Phil, that this is going to happen immediately, it's still unclear as to how that transition is going to take effect, and also what is it going to look like for a lot of those borrowers that need their loan service. The other big key here with the Department of Education winding down with that executive order, a lot of people are concerned about what about special needs and also that those food assistance programs that a lot of local and state districts rely on. The president announcing today that is going to fall to Robert Kennedy Jr. and the Health and Human Services Department.
Alex, you point out 40 million Americans have federal student loan debt. How are people responding to these changes?
Well, Phil, I mean, this was a huge win for a lot of Republicans that say that this is something that has been more than 40 years in the making, trying to get rid of the Department of Education here. But you have others on the opposite side of the aisle, and also a lot of education groups that call this chaos. In fact, one went as far as to call it illegal. And that's because there's something called the Higher Education Act of 1965, which essentially stipulates that federal student aid office should be overseen by the Secretary of Education. Phil, I say all that to say that there are likely going to be legal challenges for this change in the coming weeks.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Alex Perche from Washington, D.C. Alex, thank you. Columbia University has now agreed to White House demands in an effort to protect $400 million in federal funding. The New York school was at the epicenter of protests against the war in Gaza last year, protests that critics say sometimes cross the line into anti-Semitism. Last week, the White House sent a letter demanding the university make changes or the funding would be withheld. Today, Columbia announced it would give in to those demands, including putting new leadership in charge of overseeing Middle East studies and banning face masks at protests. The Trump administration has closed the government office responsible for conducting oversight of the president's immigration crackdown. The Office of Civil Liberties was the civil rights branch for the Department of Homeland Security. They investigated allegations of law enforcement misconduct made by migrants, their families, and the public. More than 100 officials were told today they would be placed on leave for 60 days to find another job, or they will be fired in May. Coming up, this TikTok photo filter went viral. But is it funny or is it hurtful? The backlash and why the company is pulling it. President Trump now says he will be flexible about the next round of reciprocal tariffs. But how are businesses across the country dealing with the uncertainty caused by the president's threats for further tariffs? Our Martha Raddatz is in Florida talking with business owners when we come back.
As a small business owner, there's that kind of sense of, okay, you have to plan, don't panic, plan, wait and see what happens, but you have to constantly be thinking, okay, if this goes into effect, what next?
Welcome back. President Trump has been trying to ease concerns about the state of the economy after his rocky tariff rollout, saying today that he is open to talks about preventing tariffs, even though he is still intending for them to take effect.
We've been ripped off by every country in the world, friend and foe. We've been ripped off on trade. We've been ripped off on military. We protect people and they don't do anything for us. It's just so unfair for years and years. And now some of that money is going to be coming back to us in the form of tariffs.
Okay, so how are businesses across the country dealing with the fallout? We traveled to Florida to hear from leaders across several industries about the impacts of the president's trade war. Here's ABC News Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raddatz.
It's the nation's fourth largest economy. From the millions of acres of Florida's rich farmland to the factories that bottle its renowned orange juice, and the wood sourced for the tables where that juice might be served. The Sunshine State exports more than $72 billion in goods every year, with a large portion going to Canada and Mexico.
We grow about a dozen different types of vegetables.
We make a full range of products, citrus products.
I primarily deal with hardwoods.
We produce sheep butter.
But the future of Florida's robust trade relationships and the bottom line for these local businesses are now potentially in jeopardy because of America's escalating trade war with its closest neighbors. Devi Maharaj sells wood products in Central Florida, about 10 to 15% of which comes from Canada.
This is the one that my vendor has said to expect an increase in the cost.
She says she's already struggling with what the tariffs will mean for her.
As a small business owner, there's that kind of sense of, okay, you have to plan, don't panic, plan, wait and see what happens, but you have to constantly be thinking, okay, if this goes into effect, what next? Because there will be increases to cost of the lumber, and then how am I going to handle that? Am I going to pass it on fully to the customers? Am I going to try to carry some of it myself?
Maharaj compared the current tariff uncertainty with her experience managing her business through the pandemic.
And basically what I did then was I held on to my prices as long as I could, and then after one or two times of seeing it tick up, and it wasn't ticking up by a lot, like a few cents here or a dollar there, then I changed my board foot price to reflect that. And now in 2024 and beginning 2025, we're finally seeing lumber kind of stabilize, and we're dealing with this situation, which is bringing that volatility and uncertainty back.
If your prices doubled, it seems like you'd absolutely have to pass that on to the customer.
Yes, if I still have a demand for that particular product, then that's what's going to happen. If something gets too expensive, it's too out of your budget, then you find an alternative or you do without it.
But here in Florida, like so many places across the nation, it is not just the tariffs that business owners and farmers are concerned about, it is the uncertainty.
Well, that's painted aluminum.
Luis Fejo is the sales manager at Century Metals. He says President Donald Trump's 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel have complicated business. How do you deal with it?
It's very difficult, honestly. We're put in a very tough spot because if we go out and we try to hedge against potential increases, we put ourselves at risk.
Fejo says prices skyrocketed on Trump's first day in office after he announced tariffs on Mexico and Canada.
Our basic conversion price of metal more than doubled over the last 6 weeks since he just made the mention of tariffs. If substantial tariffs go into place, right now it's going to be status quo. We import, probably 40% of our metal. We've had to look for alternatives for some of these countries that are, Mexico, for example, that we can no longer bring it from. And we're sourcing domestically.
And Fejo says even with the threat of tariffs, he's already paying the price.
I think that we just need certainty moving forward. If we're going to institute tariffs, then let's institute tariffs. But let's not go back and forth and decide today yes, tomorrow no. Because we're going to be on the hook for whatever tariffs we do pay coming in. As of today, we're already paying tariffs on metal that we're importing that was bought, months ago.
Just about 30 miles due west of President Trump's home in West Palm Beach, third-generation farmer John Hundley runs his 25,000-acre family farm.
Palm Beach County is very diversified. We have, a lot of tourism in this county, beautiful beaches, great golf courses, great restaurants, and it's, if not the largest, it's one of the largest agricultural counties, east of the Mississippi River all the way to the Canadian border. And we have a very long growing season here.
He says the majority of his produce stays domestic, but some is exported to Canada, which is Florida's largest agricultural export destination.
They'll be importing a lot of sweet corn from us. We send them green beans, different dry vegetables such as peppers and cucumbers, squash. But we also send broccoli and cabbage to Canada as well.
Though it may take a while to see effects, Hundley says tariffs on Mexican produce could limit competition for domestic suppliers.
I think it would be mostly positive for U.S. growers. I surely can't speak for all of them, but I think from our perspective and our time frame of production, I don't see it hurting us too much. They'll just bring tremendous amounts of volume across the southern border and just put it in our markets at very low costs. And it puts a strain on the crops and the growers here in the United States, especially those growing in the winter months. I've seen the foreign supply just create such an oversupply situation that a lot of these crops end up getting destroyed. They're never harvested. It's waste.
And the business owner dismissed the notion tariffs may mean higher prices for American consumers.
I think ultimately the consumer's going to benefit. I think because what's going to happen is you're going to have a better, consistent U.S. supply, which is a safe supply. And I tell you, without growers in the United States, without the farmers in the United States, I think it becomes a matter of national security. Because if we can't feed ourselves, we're in trouble.
Paracani Farms, which recently acquired Florida-based brand Natalie's Orchid Island Juice, exports its manufactured juice product all over the world.
We have seen a dip in orders from Canada since the tariffs went in place.
Senior Vice President Mark Crane tells us he hasn't seen a change in material and production costs yet.
So far, the tariffs have not had an impact on us, but it would have an impact if they go in place for a period of time or for an extended period of time.
But he's part of a team running daily scenarios on how tariffs could impact their business based on the latest news from the White House.
We have a team of analysts who work through all the numbers of what the potential impacts might be if the tariffs are in place and then when they're not in place, and whether there might be exemptions and so forth.
we also look at what other opportunities might we have to source the product somewhere else. But the hardest thing for us is trying to find a quality supplier.
While most of the fruit they source is domestic, Natalie's relies on limes imported from Mexico.
98% of the limes that we use come from Mexico. So if there was a tariff, a 25% tariff, we would do our best to mitigate that and not pass all of it on to the consumer. But ultimately, consumers will have increased prices.
Crane says their lime suppliers in Mexico are facing the same uncertainty.
They're trying to manage it and trying to understand what's going to happen next. And nobody's quite sure of what's happening next. So they have made efforts to get more lime across the border before a potential tariff might come in. But it's not easy to do.
At the end of the day, Crane says they'll have to adapt to whatever comes next.
Tariffs do make it harder and they make it more complicated. It becomes another factor that we have to deal with every day.
All right, our thanks to Martha Raddatz. Still to come, this March Madness, it's all about the aura. Meet the student manager of the McNeese State men's basketball team, who is charming social media with his commitment, his style, and his rapping. But first, the happiness report is out. We're going to let you know the happiest places to live in the world. That's next by the numbers. Welcome back. The annual World Happiness Report was released this week by the University of Oxford's Wellbeing Research Center. The report ranks countries by how their citizens rate their own lives and looks at factors impacting happiness. So where are the happiest places around the world? Let's take a look by the numbers. For the 8th year in a row, Finland was named the happiest country. The average life rating out of Finland was 7.736 out of 10. In fact, the top 4 countries on this list were Nordic countries, with Denmark, Iceland, and Sweden right behind the Finns. Meantime, the United States came in 24th. That is its lowest ranking in any of these reports. Also notable, a staggering 19% of young adults worldwide said they did not have someone to count on for social support, which is a major increase from prior years. And household size was also a link to happiness. Researchers said households with 4 to 5 people living together were the happiest in Mexico and in Europe. Also strongly connected to happiness, believing someone would return a lost wallet. The report said Nordic countries, like those among the happiest worldwide, also ranked the highest among those who expected and actually saw lost wallets returned. There it is. Coming up, it is one of the most iconic holiday songs of all time. Now Mariah Carey is facing a legal battle over her classic All I Want for Christmas Is You. We'll tell you how it ended. And she is the lead vocalist of the Grammy-nominated band Japanese Breakfast and a best-selling author. Michelle Zauner joins us to talk about the indie band's new album and tour. Welcome back. The Elon Musk backlash hits Tesla trade-ins. TikTok called out for body shaming, and Christmas comes early yet again for Mariah Carey. Those stories and more in tonight's rundown.
The measles outbreak in Texas continues to grow, now totaling 309 cases with 30 reported over the past 3 days. Most are in unvaccinated people. More than 40 people have been hospitalized so far. The state's total is more than the entire nation saw last year.
It's something the likes of which nobody has seen before.
President Trump today announced a new fighter jet named the F-47, perhaps after the 47th president, Trump himself. Boeing was awarded the $20 billion contract to produce the jet.
There's never been anything even close to it, from speed to maneuverability to what it can have to payload.
The plane's design remains secret, but would likely include stealth capabilities, advanced sensors, and cutting-edge engines. TikTok has removed a viral filter which made people appear overweight after it sparked a wave of criticism. It was known as the chubby filter. The plugin would edit a photo of a user to make it look as if they had gained weight. TikTok claimed the AI filter had been uploaded through CapCut, an app separate to TikTok, but still under ByteDance, the same parent company. Tesla owners are trading in their electric vehicles at record pace. Car shopping site Edmunds says consumer interest in Tesla vehicles is at its lowest since October of 2022. The brand has become a target for criticism by critics of CEO Elon Musk, who has taken controversial actions to slash government spending. Tesla stock has plummeted over 40% this year, and its facilities have faced protests, vandalism, and arson, including a fire set overnight at a charging station in North Dakota. The Trump administration is extending the deadline it gave New York City to end its congestion pricing program, after New York officials vowed to keep the program in place. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announced on social media that the department is granting New York a 30-day extension. He also warned New York Governor Kathy Hochul that President Trump and the federal government are, quote, putting New York on notice. And a federal judge has ruled that Mariah Carey did not steal her iconic hit, All I Want for Christmas Is You, from other songwriters. In 2023, songwriters Andy Stone of Louisiana and Troy Powers of Tennessee filed a $20 million lawsuit alleging that Carey's 1994 song infringed the copyright of their country 1989 song with the same title. The judge granted Carey's request for summary judgment, giving her and her co-defendant a victory without going to trial.
We are also tracking several headlines around the world at this hour. Sudan's military says its forces retook the presidential palace from the country's Parliamentary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. After 2 years of fighting, they have reclaimed the seat of power, marking a major victory for the army. But the RSF still controls territory in the western Darfur region and elsewhere. And late today, there was reported of continued fighting around the capital of Khartoum. A new report on the world's glaciers has a stark warning. Retreating glaciers threaten the food and water supply of 2 billion people around the world. The United Nations report was released to mark the first World Day for Glaciers. It's noted that 5 of the past 6 years have witnessed the most rapid glacier retreat on record. Twin panda cubs are getting their first outdoor adventures at the Berlin Zoo. The 7-month-old toddlers were busy climbing trees, rocks, and platforms in their outdoor enclosure for the very first time. Zookeepers tell us that the pair had been practicing on smaller platforms indoors, but with spring officially here, it was time for them to get outside and get some higher climbs in. Michelle Zauner is both a Grammy-nominated singer and songwriter with her band Japanese Breakfast and a best-selling author. Her memoir, Crying in H Mart, captivated readers by detailing her grief after losing her mom to cancer and remembering her by way of shared love of Korean food and culture. Her band, Japanese Breakfast, received Grammy nominations for their third album, Jubilee, nominated for both Best New Artist and Best New Alternative Album. That was a big year. And just today, their highly anticipated fourth album, For Melancholy Brunettes and Sad Women, is now out. Take a listen to their song, Picture Window. Michelle Zauner of Japanese Breakfast, it is so great to have you here. Such a pleasure to meet you. As I told you, that book meant an awful lot to me, and so does your music. For Melancholy Brunettes and Sad Women, it's a cool title. I'm wondering, is it for them? Is it dedicated to them? Or is it inspired by?
I think it's both. I think particularly the brooding type will enjoy this record, but it's actually a quote from a book of John Cheever short stories that obviously felt like a signifier for both myself and the people that I thought would enjoy this album.
So it's different from Jubilee. Fans of your music who've followed the career will notice that this is melancholy, appropriately so. How did you achieve that musically?
I think after touring an album that was quite boisterous and extroverted and so much about joy, after writing a book and many records about grief, that album was about giving myself sort of permission to feel joy again. And I think For Melancholy Brunettes and Sad Women is sort of an album giving me permission to just feel sad about other things in my life. And yeah, I think that I wanted something that felt a little bit more intimate, a little bit more thoughtful and somber, and that was just the natural direction that the record took.
On this album, there's a great, you have a duet with Jeff Bridges, and I did an interview with him, and he loves music. For people who don't know, way more than an actor, he loves music. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I wrote this song called Men in Bars, which is sort of like a country murder ballad that is a duet between a man and a woman. And my producer, Blake Mills, and I were thinking what could be a really fun cameo. And he had played on Jeff's record, and he played me a song called Nothing Yet off of his record that I thought was so beautiful. And it was a really unexpected choice. And I was just like, if you can get Jeff Bridges to sing on this song, that would be great. And so we texted him, and he video called us like half an hour later and was just down. And so such a music fan and really wanted to be a part of it. And yeah, that's how he ended up
really
on the
kind of
record.
down to earth into music too. Japanese Breakfast will soon be on tour. You're calling it the Melancholy Tour. I hear that you want it to be more theatrical, but when I hear that, I automatically think like David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust theatrical. What are you thinking when you're talking about theatrics?
This is the first time I've been able to incorporate some live production into our tour, and so I really wanted it to feel almost like you were watching a play or an opera or a ballet. So we had special pieces fabricated for the tour, and yeah, I think it's gonna, because some of the songs are so narrative, I felt like it would be really special to approach it almost like we were putting on a play.
You're just switching subjects a bit to your book. You sort of bared your soul. You spoke about grief. You connected with so many people on that level. I know you recently spent time in Korea gathering material for your next book. Can you tell us what you're writing about?
Yeah, so my second book is going to be about studying the Korean language. So I just spent a year living in Seoul. The picture window music video clip that you saw, I actually shot in Korea. A lot of those people were new friends that I made. A lot of them are part of the indie music scene over there. And yeah, I just had the best time. So my next book is going to be about my year living abroad and studying the Korean language.
I can't wait to read it. I love the first book, and I can't wait to read the second and the tour. Congratulations. Really exciting year coming up. You can hear Japanese Breakfast's new album for melancholy brunettes and sad women wherever you stream your music, and you can catch them at Coachella or on tour beginning next month. March Madness is in full swing, and there is an internet star emerging from all the fanfare. Our Mary Bruce with the story.
Tonight, it's the surprise March Madness upset and the new unlikely star.
McNeese has its first ever NCAA tournament victory.
The underdog from Lake Charles, Louisiana, McNeese State's victory over top-ranked Clemson, and their secret weapon, their student manager, senior Amir Khan.
The manager, Amir Khan, oh, he's all smiles today.
The 22-year-old sports management major becoming a fan favorite.
Oh, he's taking pictures in the stands.
Taking selfies, cheering on his team. Afterward, celebrating their win on the court.
Amir Khan right in the mix.
Amir going viral a few weeks back after leading his undefeated McNeese Cowboys out of the tunnel before the game. Hyping them up, the video racking up millions of views.
Keep an eye out for their celebrity manager, Amir Aura Khan.
That's right. He went viral.
He sure did.
His team grateful, nicknaming him their Aura.
The man, the myth, the legend, Amir Aura Khan.
Cheering them every game, every practice.
McNeese is led out by their viral sensation.
Leading them out last night before their big win, holding a boombox. Fans there wearing pictures of him on their shirts. Supporting his team from head to toe, his face even there on the players' and cheerleaders' socks.
Well, how about this? This is the McNeese cheerleaders. Their socks are the face of the manager, Amir Khan. Now that's incredible.
And with so many now cheering for Amir, he's making a professional endorsement deal with big-name brands like Buffalo Wild Wings and Insomnia Cookies. And right here tonight, that proud manager, Amir Khan.
Being able to be a part of a team that not only goes to March Madness, but wins, in the tournament, it means a lot.
Amir and his message.
I take pride in what I do. I want all student managers to get the shine they deserve. If I can give them a bit of attention, I definitely want to do that.
It's so great. ABC News contributor and Sirius XM radio host Mike Muse is here to end the evening with us. Mike, March Madness.
The champ is here.
You're going to win this year?
Yeah.
It transcends.
It
March
does.
Madness is crazy. Why?
It's emotion. It's really that moment where it's the highs and lows. It's in an instant. You can win it all and you can lose it all. Like a team like McNeese, that is what March Madness is about. It's a school that maybe a majority of Americans have not heard of. They have not been in the tournament, and for yet to see these young men out there in the court fulfilling their destiny. I can only imagine since the age of maybe 5, when you get to a D1 level like that, you've been dreaming of that moment in the sun of the March Madness, and you win. This is what March Madness is about. It's emotion, it's high spirit, it's cheering on your favorite alma mater, or also too making strange bedfellows. I'm a Big Ten guy. I have majority SEC in my Final Four. Like strange bedfellows, bro. Like this is what March Madness is about.
And every game seems to come down to the last few seconds, and everybody loves an underdog. And this is a big deal for betting. It's $3 billion will be bet on the games, and that's on the legal side.
That's just legal side. March Madness, I think it really began to normalize betting is because of this, right? It's all about odds, right? What is the favorability? What is the over? What is the under? And people really associate that when it comes down to filling out their brackets. They really look at statistics. It's a very statistics and data-driven tournament and sport when it comes to March, which makes it maddening.
And yet brackets are busted all the time, no matter what the stats are.
McNeese.
You're right, McNeese. The men's side, not as popular as it once was. The women's side, booming. Obviously, there are the obvious reasons why, but...
Men is one and done, but Phil, I have a little bit of a meeting, they do the 1 year and they're done, so we don't get a chance to have a sticky. With the women's, we get a chance to see a little bit more sticky. I have a little bit of a critique for the first time. I'm always positive, but I really challenge the NCAA Women's Association to really do a better job of coordinating with the WNBA because they failed the women's basketball players last year by focusing so much on Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and really Caitlin Clark that they didn't pay attention to the women that was still going to be returning because the women's basketball in college are not one and done. They're sticky. They're staying around to 3 to 4 years to finish because they make more money
and those women are the next ones up
before the WNBA. So by them not focusing on the next round like the Paige Bucklers, the Juju Watkins, the Lauren Betts, they didn't get a chance to really let America know, like, yo, just because Caitlin and Angel Reese is gone, look at Juju Watkins, look at this upcoming star. They failed during that time period. So I hope that this season, I'm talking to them very directly and specifically, that they will grow the sport. Focus on these dynamic women. Focus on Dawn Staley, an incredible coach, to think about what she's going to do for those returning women who are going to come back from South Carolina next year. A lot of them could come back from USC, UCLA. Promote the next round. So that next round March Madness, we're already anticipating these phenomenal women that are in the pipeline.
WNBA, listen up. Mike Musa speaking.
Yeah.
Who do you have winning?
Yo, Phil, I have Florida all the way.
Yes,
Listen,
I do too, the Gators.
My nerves are bad, Phil, because I'm returning champ for the Coliseum Brackets, my friend group, right? I won last year. And I am stressed.
All right.
You know how hard it is to be great, Phil?
I don't. Not as great as you.
I mean, you deal with it every day.
Mike, always good to see you, my friend. Happy
Friday. What do I need to do, Phil? How do I handle greatness?
For this hour. I'm Phil Lipoff, along with Mike Muse. Stay tuned for ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. And thanks so much for streaming with us.